Hello, everyone, and welcome to the monthly Three Principles Global Community webinar. The Three Principles Global Community, also known as 3PGC, is a nonprofit organization that's committed to bringing an understanding of the three principles to people throughout the world. Today, we have with us Keith Blevens, PhD. Keith was among the very first psychologists to meet, study with, and be mentored by Sydney Banks. Sid was a close friend and associate of Keith's in countless interactions in innumerable ways until Sid's death 32 years later. Before he passed away, Sid gave his last writings to Keith to include in a book, something Sid never did with anyone else in his life. One of the awards Keith is proudest of is a 2008 Certificate of Competence by Sydney Banks to teach the three principles as discovered and taught by Sydney Banks. Keith has advanced degrees from Indiana University and a PhD from Texas Tech University. He has worked in a wide variety of settings in many different locations throughout his Three Principles career. He is the former director of psychological services at Baylor University and has held adjunct faculty positions at 9 universities. He was a senior associate at Pransky & Associates for 16 years, and he and his wife, Valda Monroe, now own their own private consulting firm based in Laconner, Washington. So I'm really excited to hear your talk today. Keith, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Bonnie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I look forward to further conversations with you or others that I meet through this journey of this presentation. When I was thinking about this opportunity, I was reflecting back on the experience of my life with the principles, and I started to think about some of the basics and things that were very meaningful to me and have remained meaningful to me all along. Certainly the three principles, but then I thought about the practicality of it, and I realized that it's really nice to find out that it's a world of mind, thought, and consciousness, and not a world of circumstances and events and situations that we really live in, and that is such a different conception of our basic life. Whenever I was working on this book of writings that, as you mentioned, Sid Banks said to me, "Well, you know what the universe is," and I thought to myself, well, yeah, I know what the universe is. I've seen all the programs on how the universe was made and the Big Bang and et cetera, all the planets and galaxies. And so, I mean, all these thoughts raced through my mind in an instant, and I thought, yeah, I know what the universe is. It's planets and galaxies and stars and space and immeasurable infinite space. And he said, but it was a rhetorical question. He wasn't really asking me to kind of tell him what the universe was. He said he said something that it blew my mind, really, because he said knowledge. That it was knowledge, and it was like one of those moments where the truth of something resonates, and I thought, oh my goodness, knowledge, that's a completely different universe than the universe that I thought existed. And his insight, his enlightenment, and his teaching and his communication about life as life as mind, thought, and consciousness, and not anything less, spiritualized everything. It psychologicalized everything. It made everything different, and it had also proved itself to me over and over and over again. It still does to me every day, and people talk to me about that every day. They say, this just keeps on helping me. I keep on learning from it. I keep on seeing the world, seeing how actual reality is being created. So that's what I wanted to talk about, is how actual reality is being created, and not how we've been, well, that it's being created moment to moment to moment, and that it's close in. It's not a reality out there. It's a reality that we all co-participate in. And that was a very different comprehension of the nature of existence and reality that Sid saw, and he communicated it so eloquently and completely, and knew it so certainly that it really just sent shockwaves through myself, my wife, my family, my colleagues, all of us, and we're still in that dynamic of communication and sharing what we're getting from seeing how it actually works. One of the things that he said early on was that to find what you're looking for, abandon all thought that there's a separation between the physical and the psychological, or the physical and the spiritual. And that was really to the same point. It was there was this illusionary gap that seemed to be that physicality, situations, circumstances, events, time, all those kinds of things were realities in the world, and they were impacting me and affecting me, and I had to cope with them or deal with them, or I think get a better attitude about them, or change them in some way to better please myself, or to better avoid them putting me at risk and putting me under the gun of being affected. So that was the struggle, and it created mental sicknesses in me, of course, because I didn't have the right understanding of what was really happening. I thought I had to deal with circumstances and events. I was dealing with a world of separation, and with the foundation of separation, which didn't really exist, that I thought existed, there were mental sicknesses born of that disconnection. So when I got it sorted out, when I heard what Sid had to say, it removed the subject-object illusion. And that really woke me up to a whole different dynamic of how experience works, how reality works, and it's proven itself to be true. It was like finding a key to reality, finding a key to a logic, to a sensibility, to a truth that was self-evident. Once I could see that it didn't work the other way. There was a kind of like a moment of truth where I thought, and there's been many since, but there was sort of that moment of truth of like, oh, it doesn't work that way. That's an inadequate explanation. That's a misunderstanding. And by golly, I've been under the burden of it, and under the sickness of it, really, for most all of my life. And when I looked around, I could see that most others were too, and they still are, that there's the kind of a persistent illusion and mental sicknesses that come from that wrong foundation, you might say, or an illusory foundation, that there is a separation between the physical and the psychological slash spiritual. So getting that foundation right, getting it, putting it back together to work the way it actually already worked. It wasn't a coping mechanism or a good attitude, or it wasn't like I found a truth about how it really already worked. It wasn't like I made it work that way. That reality was what it is what it is. It was I got to get aligned with how it already is, and that there was mental healing and curative powers in that realignment, getting it sorted. There were a lot of mistakes that I was making, not understanding how it really worked. And those mistakes were mental sicknesses. So one of the things that Sid said was that the mental sicknesses that we experience are when we put feelings onto objects. And when we, he said, if you can see the objects without the feelings, you're healthy. And I think it's that's just, he was so profound and so simple, describing this angst and suffering that we all know about to one degree or another. We've all split our thinking into there's some of our thinking, some of our feelings, some of our experience that seems to be determined by something other than thought in the moment, and that misunderstanding is going to disappear from our lives, and we're going to see that we live in a world of mind, thought, and consciousness, not because it's a belief or a good idea or a theory or anything that we need to prove. It's something that proves itself. It's a truth, and so a truth is hard to needs no proof. It needs realization. It needs insight to be verified by those of us here to find this wholeness of that mind, thought, and consciousness can't be split, can't be to split it is to split the universe, to split something that's unsplittable, and we lose a wholeness, and we lose an integrity with that wholeness when we do so. So by healing that split, we come back to home. We come back to a place where we've always existed. So that's the promise here of awakening and insight that is to a truth that is pre-existing. So it's not a truth that's psychological in any sense that I've ever knew psychology. When I studied psychology, it was always based in time and birth and or birth order, or it was based in personality, based in factors that of experiences that people had had. And Sid was interesting that way, because one of the first things when I met him and talked to him was he said, why are you focusing so much on the past? And I thought, well, my goodness, that's the whole nature of our approach. Everyone, the past is a fixture. And he was completely against. I mean, in a nice way, but he was saying that, well, the past doesn't exist as a thing. It's a it's a thought. But you're identifying it as more than thought. You're thinking of it as a thing, and that really was mind-blowing to me, that the past didn't exist as something that we all have to get over. And there were many, many, many more insights to come about this error that I had been educated in unwittingly by everyone, because everyone is making the same error. And I began to realize the revolutionary impact of this idea was phenomenal, because it was like switching from one of the great revolutions that's happened in our society is in the history of man is one of them was the switch from a sun-centered from an earth-centered solar system to a sun-centered one. And that really was a phenomenal truth, but it was not clearly evident. It looked by any person up until Copernicus would have sworn that the Earth was motionless and the sun was a planet. They could see the sun orbiting every day. We were still, we still feel still to me, and the sun, I still say the sun rises and sets, but actually it doesn't work that way at all. So the appearances of that illusion are still with us, but it would be very hard to get a lot of people to bet huge amounts of money on the idea that it's an Earth-centered solar system. That that illusion was broken, and we had a new dispensation, and it really freed the mind up of humanity. And many people credit that one simple thing that didn't change anything. It just changed our conception of how it worked to a more realistic comprehension. And when that shift happened, it gave birth to the Renaissance. So there was great liberation of thought, and it killed the Middle Ages, for Pete's sake. I mean, that one simple correction, which was always the way it had always worked, but we got oriented to the truth of it, really moved society and civilization out of the Middle Ages. I mean, what a phenomenal impact a simple arcane truth that solved problems. Like there were consistent calendar problems with that old model. It was impossible to predict the length of a year. They were always having to adjust it. Every few years, the calendar would get wonky, and the Pope or the Caesar or whoever would have to come together and say, hey, we've got to make an adjustment. There's something wrong with the calendar. So they could not figure out the length of a year. Once they knew the paradigm, once they knew how the universe, or how the solar system, I should say, was actually constructed, then we learned to adjust it such that there's leap years, and then every other 100 years, there's no leap year. And that fine-tuning of the calendar made us in sync with how the solar system actually worked, which made our days predictable rather than random and off. So some sort of course correction herein is established by how mind, thought, and consciousness work. It's a revolutionary truth that we can realign ourselves with. It's not something that we have to believe in. We're asking you or asking anyone, check it out. Think for yourself. See if your thinking isn't, and mind and consciousness. When I say thinking, I mean all three, but thinking is a simple reduction in terms. See if thinking isn't present in everything. And if it is, or since it is, or because it is, there are implications to that. If it's not present in everything, then I take back everything that I have to say, and we can we can dismantle the three principles and everything Sid Banks had to say. Sometimes he would say that, like, if you can prove me that I'm wrong, I'll take back everything I had to say. Well, that was a stunning pronouncement from a person of such confidence that I had to take him seriously, even though he wasn't an educated person, but he spoke with great authority, and he understood something profoundly that was undeniable to me as I got more insight about it. It wasn't undeniable to me at first. I had to see it for myself. So that was part of this changeover, I think, from a circumstances, situation, time-based psychology to a psychology that begins before the beginning of time, as he so eloquently said once. So one that begins before the beginning of time was not one that I had any familiarity with whatsoever. But he spoke about that. He spoke about consciousness. He said consciousness, he said to have a feeling or an emotion. So I want to just touch upon the three principles as I heard him describe them. He said the consciousness, the power of the principle of consciousness is that to have a feeling or an emotion, you have to have thought to create the feeling and consciousness to be aware of it. And he said, I'm not talking about the form or level of consciousness has led us to, such as a bad marriage or good marriage or a happy life or unhappy life. I'm talking about consciousness as a spiritual neutral power before human experience. So that was a shift for me from a personal consciousness to a greater consciousness of knowledge, a consciousness of universal consciousness. And both being the same, but if I kept to a personal consciousness, there was a very individualized kind of focus, and I wouldn't connect back out to some larger intelligence. He said that mind, when I have a degree, I have a doctorate from a very good school, and in psychology, and I didn't ever have any definition of mind. Like, it took this Scottish welder with a ninth grade education to hit me with what a definition of mind. Like, I had no definition of mind. It was not ever part of my education. And he said, mind is not brain. I thought, wow, it's not brain. That was shocking. They were synonymous. People talk about them synonymously all the time. He said, mind is not brain. It's not, he said, it's not a thing. It's not a thought. It's a power that acts as a catalyst. And a catalyst is an interesting metaphor, because a catalyst, like one time I needed some glue for a project at home, and I needed some really good glue, so I went to the hardware store and they said, oh, buy this glue. And the man gave it to me. It was in a little packet, and it was a little, it was kind of a plastic little packet, and there was a separation, a membrane in the packet, and one part of the side of the glue was a little bit of the packet was had a little yellow tint to it, and the other was clear. And he said, you break that membrane, and you roll that those two substances together. One of them is an inert substance called the glue. The other is activates the glue. That's the catalyst. So the catalyst would act upon the glue, and he says, when that when you break that membrane, it gets hot. And when it gets hot, you snip off the corner of that packet and you spread it on what you want to glue. He says, don't get it on your fingers because it'll glue your fingers together. But if you don't do that, and you get it where you want it, and you put those two surfaces together, it'll weld them together. So mind acts as a catalyst. It's not. It has power, but it acts. But because it acts upon something, it's a neutral power that acts, and it turns your thought, whether you're aware of your thought or not, whether as Sid defined it, whether conscious or unconscious, whether you know it or not, it turns your thought, whether conscious or unconscious, into the reality you now see. So that was, wow, that was like an experience. You see that insightfully. You realize, gee, that is a profound dynamic of my own life and my own experience and how it works. It spiritualizes reality. It makes reality not not circumstances that I'm coping with or dealing with or reckoning with, but it brings it shifts it from a misunderstanding, an inherent misunderstanding that has built-in conflicts, because you think about things and it doesn't look like the things you're thinking about are it looks like the things you're thinking about give you feeling, but it's actually that you're thinking about the things is giving you feeling. And that's a reversal, a profound reversal of the human experience, and it makes sense. It makes sense to people because they've noticed that thinking plays a role. But it's not just a role, it's everything. It's not just a sometimes thing, it's 100% thing. So expanding this, many people today, they know that thinking plays a role, but the cognitive people say that thinking plays a role. But we're not saying that it plays a role. We're saying it's a constant. Thought is a constant. It's a principle. It doesn't vary. It's mind is a principle. It doesn't vary. Consciousness is a principle. It doesn't vary. What you do, what thought, whatever thinking you put into that power of thought, that's what you experience, but it's not. It's not. These principles activate your reality, and understanding it that way turns it from an outside-in life to an inside-out one. And there's just a deep, profound truth to that grounds us in the nature of how actual reality is being created. And that is a tremendous importance to all of us. If we all knew how actual reality was being created, we would be it occurred to me, like, there's something really it's really wonderful to find out that it's a world of mind, thought, and consciousness, and not a world of circumstances you're living in, because you can you don't have to stay mad at your spouse or your friend, or you don't have to once you've had a thought, doesn't mean you have to stick with it, because it's that your thought was determined by something other than mind, thought, and consciousness. Even you can see, oh, my bad, or my mistake, or you can change your mind. And I think that the truth of that would stop a war. I think it would stop any of the persistent psychological problems that we now suffer from worldwide would be arrested and stopped by the sanity of the truth of how it really works. Everyone already knows this, but they don't know it to be 100%. So they use it as kind of a coping strategy, or try to get a better attitude, or try to get over things, or try to forgive, or try to give people the benefit of the doubt. But you don't have to do that. It's the way it already works. It's already up and running. It's a true psychology is already here. It's always been here. And we don't make that be what it is. We just are coming around to getting awake to how what it already is, and we're privileged to experience it and share it, but we didn't create it. The power of thought is not self-created. The power of mind is not self-created. The power of consciousness is not self-created. Those take us out of this of the trap of an individualized, alienated, separated, disconnected experience to one of transcendence and change. And we've got a chance to change our minds now that we didn't really know how easy it might be, how beneficial it might be to align ourselves with the truth of how this works. So that will make the future for humankind, as they kind of loosen the screws of this, of how it doesn't work, will get more and more spotted. How it does work will become more and more beneficial to us, and we will become more functional because of it. We'll become more loving because of it. We'll become stronger because of it. We'll become healthier because of it. So it's not a thing that we have to do. It's a truth. It's a paradigm. It's an explanation that has once you see that it's there, it proves itself. Every time anyone has ever been resilient in the history of the human race, it's been proven. We have no model for that. As such, we've considered it an anomaly. We've considered it something that resilience needs to be taught, or better coping strategies. We have not had a psychology of resilience based in that there's something true about resilience, that people are not that they're not relegated to events and circumstances. And that's not a personal accomplishment or a personal overcoming of circumstances. It's the way it really works. None of us are. None of our feelings are determined by what happens to us, and that's a different understanding that we're now prepared to embrace. So there's a shift, and we're all, happy to see how it really works, how actual reality is being created. And there's something in the momentness. There's something about that there's a specific place in time that you can see reality being created like this. It's got a and that's not in the past or the future. That only exists in the present moment. So there's a quickening of the truth of this reality creation, perceptible to anyone who looks in the present moment. And the present moment is a very there's truth and wisdom and power in this present moment. So when people get oriented to see that, they see how feeling is coming from thinking in the moment. They see it's not coming from anywhere else. And when that happens, they get a practical reason to look there. It's like there's insight in that present moment. You'll see it more and more often. And when that happens, you go beyond your past thinking, and you're into a different experience, because you're not relegated to your past opinions and judgments and beliefs. This is not the principles are not a paradigm of or not a they're not a misunderstanding of they're not a it's a truthful there's a truthful nature about this that we've all realized already, but we haven't really seen the profundity of it, the level of it, the depth of it, the truth of it. So as we get more a conscious awareness about the truth of it, it really has a factor that you start to live more and more insightfully and less ignorantly, less and less reactively, less and less limited by your own misunderstanding. And those are jumps in levels, in your levels. But you can't make that happen. It's an effect of these insights. These insights elevate you. You don't elevate yourself. You can't really elevate your own self, because there's as you go forward, there's a kind of curious disappearance of your own ego. Like, and Sid talked about this. He said that ego was an image of self-importance, and ego was everything you think you know about this world. And those two things really began to show me the liberation of going beyond my thinking about my thinking about things as though thought wasn't included in the feeling of those things. He said, an insight is when your ego collapses on a particular subject. And these little mini insights that we have all the time, we're like, we see, oh, it doesn't work that way, it works this way. Oh, those little ahas, those little reminders, those little self-corrections. There's self-correction built into the truth and logic and wisdom of the principles and how they work, that liberate us from our egotism and our small-mindedness and our when I think egotistically, I think embattled, I think small, I think hurt or judgmental. I think in ways that are not true. And that's what you get when you forget how it works, when you don't see it, when you misunderstand, you become egotistical. Now, that provides a real common denominator, because there's no one that can't relate to that happening to them. So we have no, unless we want to be a hypocrite, we have no license, no position, no leg to stand on to condemn or feel better than someone else judgmentally because of their egotism, because we suffer the same malady, and that really leads to a lot of compassion and humility rather than judgment and getting our back up and getting self-righteous and feeling superior or inferior. All those are egotistical illusions. Understanding how this works really suspends, or you get insight into your own ego and how that falsely separates you and falsely torments you and falsely limits you, and you see that happens to everybody. So there's no point or purpose in getting behind that and feeling that you really are tracking the truth whenever you're feeling judgmental or superior or inferior, because you're not. That's ego. That's an ego illusion. So you begin to find a way to get past that, because it's not true. It doesn't work that way. That's another profound benefit of the principles and how they work. They teach you, they help you go beyond your limited self and find your true self, find your sense of connection and community, and the peace that comes with that, and the forgiveness and the mental health that comes with that is you deserve that. So we all deserve that, but we all have to change to receive it. It's not like we can keep our old thinking and change. We get to have new thinking, and we get to go beyond our limited opinions and judgments and be made bigger, infinitely bigger. And that's a different. That's not just a message of inspiration or encouragement. It's a practical it's a real change. It's a change of heart. It's a change of consciousness. It's a change of experience that you really get bigger, and you get closer to. You grow, but you grow not because you're smarter. You grow because you're less. You're going beyond your previous limitations in thinking that you were separate, or that other people were separate, or they didn't know what you know, or there's a million different ways to miss it, and miss the truth of it. So you start to see beyond your own excuses and your own limitations and your own petty thoughts for your own sake, and you insight frees you from those illusions. When you, on a particular subject, a particular place where you are what I call outside in, or where you don't see that thinking is a factor in your experience. And when I mean thinking, I mean mind, thought, and consciousness. When you believe that that's not really the way you're experiencing life, and you're experiencing it through some other means, you step out of the logic and wisdom of the principles and how this works, and you suffer accordingly. That's the way this works. So there's a sensibility to your suffering, because it's not your fault. It's something you misunderstand. So understood as such, when people punish themselves, judge themselves, get down on themselves, perpetrate, kind of heap on more self-conscious bad feelings on themselves or others because of their struggle, that open wound gets closed, because it gets closed through insight, and you get over your misunderstanding again, and you learn. So that teaches you, again, as I said earlier, it teaches you to be less of a hypocrite, and to be more of a fellow traveler, because there's no one that hasn't gotten egotistical that I've ever known. So it's a common malady. I think I'll stop there and take a breath.
For anyone who's joining us live, if you have any questions, there's a box on the right-hand side where you can type in your questions.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps everyone is feeling, as I am right now, just grateful that you've been sharing your understanding of the three principles and just really sitting in a good feeling. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Is there anything that it looks like there are no questions right now. Is there anything that you would like to share to end this presentation?
Well, that actual reality then is our future, and it has many implications and ramifications that we're just beginning to imagine, really. Just for example, a friend of mine here in La Conner, who's the town administrator, I had shared some Citibank's materials with him years ago, and he said to me, he's an ecologist, and he said on what was called the tragedy of the commons. He says, "Do you know about the tragedy of the commons?" And I said, "No, I don't know. What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's they've established through research that if there's a common pasture in a village, that imperceptibly farmers will overgraze. They'll think, well, I'll just put one more sheep out there in the common pasture. And then another person will say, well, one more cow can be tolerated here." And he said, over time, the common pasture is ruined. Even though the people don't want to ruin it, they ruin it anyway. And so he said, I think Sydney Banks has something to say about the tragedy of the commons. And I thought, he said, what did he ever say anything about that? And I thought, I remembered I asked Sid once, I said, well, what are we going to do about the ecology? It seems it's such a mess, and there's all these different conflicting ideas, and it seems like a runaway train. And how do we know, how are we going to know what to do about our situation? Because it's we could make things bad for ourselves through our own ignorance. And he said, well, you'll never do anything about the ecology until you do something about greed. And that sobered me, because I thought, oh, oh, I thought the ecology was a nasty problem. I thought greed is a nastier problem than the ecology. And then I realized that the principles speak to greed. They speak to that that selfishness, that judgmentalness, that I'm going to get mine before you can get mine, before anyone else can be a part. Be a part of this. So there's something in the truth and wisdom and logic of the principles that subverts greed to ego and outside in misunderstanding, and we can cure that. We don't have to be relegated to our greed, and that very thing that I think would stop greed, I know would stop greed, or would stop war, is not a good idea. It's not just wisdom, let's say, that would stop war, but or a good feeling that would stop war. There's some perceptible logic that feeling is not coming from anywhere else other than thought in the moment, and that the practicality of that insight changes people and stops their greed. It stops their misunderstanding. So that's what I would say. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and I thank you for this opportunity. It's been long awaited.
Thank you so much, Keith. I know I'm sitting in a very quiet mind right now. I really enjoyed hearing you share your insights and your understanding of the three principles. And thank you for everyone who attended live, and to all of you who will listen to it on YouTube later. And I just want to remind you that the next 3PGC webinar is on January 14th, and it will be with Kara Stam. Join us again.
Thank you.